Hello again, everyone. For anyone who has already, if you were early in the doors, welcome to our In Defense of Sharks and Aquatic Animal Activism webinar. Today, I will be one of your hosts, Fleur Dawes. I am the Communications Director for In Defense of Animals and do international partnerships. We have Mary Eacency, who will be helping out on the chat. So feel free to drop all of your questions into the chat. We have some amazing guests for you today, and please be sure to join and wait until the end. We'll be answering your questions at the end of the session. We also have Leah Wilborn, our farmed animals campaigner.
Hello.
So Leah will be doing an introduction to In Defense of Animals work to do with sharks and aquatic animals, and the wider context of why we care about sharks, why you should care about sharks. I'm sure you probably already do. And then we have some wonderful speakers here for you today who are going to share some of their experiences with sharks. We have Skyler Thomas, the educator and director from the feature film Monsters, Great White
Hello.
Lies.
Thanks for having me.
Skyler. And we have Spencer Roberts, who is the marine ecologist and director of Fish Defender, an organization which is dedicated to advancing marine protection. So thanks, Spencer.
Thanks for having me.
And we also have Joey Szalkiewicz, wildlife filmmaker and founder of Filament Media.
How's it going, everyone?
So thank you again for joining us here today. And like I said, please drop your questions in the chat. Mary Eacency will be womaning the chat for you today. And I'm going to hand us over to Leah Wilborn, who's going to give us an introduction. So Leah, please take it away.
All right, thank you. This is so exciting to have these three incredible advocates and speakers here today. So I'm just going to get right to it. Each of them will speak for about 10 minutes or so, and then we will have a Q&A at the end. But first of all, I'm just going to share my screen and we will get started. Okay. All right, so since 2019, In Defense of Animals started Respect for Fish Day, and we celebrate it annually on August 1st, so it is coming up. And this year, we really wanted to focus on sharks and the fact that they're so imperiled and so denigrated and misunderstood. And so therefore, we're having this today, but really Respect for Fish Day is not just about one species. It's about honoring and remembering all aquatic animals, and marine animals. I tend to say aquatic animals because when we say marine animals, that also leaves out individuals in lakes and streams and things. But yes, it's all sort of one important term, and these are sentient beings. Fish feel pain. This is what most people don't really even recognize or realize. They all have brains and central nervous systems, so they experience suffering, bonding. Some can even make tools. Some recognize up to 100 human faces even. They have families. So in Los Angeles last year and up here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we had outreach events in person. A year before that, we had some incredible activists join us. Mary Finelli, who is the founder of Fish Feel, Captain Paul Watson, founder of Sea Shepherd and the Captain Paul Watson Foundation, and then Georgie Purcell, who's with the Animal Justice Party in Australia's Parliament, and then Jonathan Balcombe, the author of What a Fish Feels, which I highly recommend everybody read. If you go to our respectforfish.org portion of our website, you will find so much more advocacy for aquatic animals. And you can also download our handout here, educational handout, The Planet's Most Abused Animals Cannot Run or Scream. So things that we've covered recently, ghost gear, the horrific term called bycatch, which is, of course, an industry term that dismisses all of the animals, up to 40% of marine animals who are killed every year in the fishing industry are actually non-target species, such as sharks and rays, dolphins, whales. This is a cow nose ray, that image in the front top middle, and we did an alert. This is all about killing contests. They celebrate the killing of cow-nosed rays. It's just absolutely disgusting. So we targeted a lot of these contests. And then, of course, you have all the other animals who are killed every year, over 3 trillion aquatic animals every year in the fishing industry. So we have 3 different alerts happening right now. Stop the Shark Act. And thank you to Spencer and Fish Defender. He's also been working on this. Check out his website because he's really covering a lot about the Shark Act, and it would roll back shark protections and actually open the door to more, quote, culling, aka mass killing of sharks. Then we have another alert: stop deadly shark nets in South Africa's Club Med beaches. Skyler Thomas has made an entire feature film about the shark nets in South Africa, monsters. So he'll be talking about that too. And then also targeting Australia's shark nets, killing dolphins, turtle, all manner of aquatic animals. So please go to respectforfish.org and check out Sign Our Alerts. Bringing it back to, of course, all individuals, all animals on this planet were born for their own reasons. And we come from the perspective of this is a human supremacy mindset. We do not have the right to exploit and kill other animals, especially for unnecessary products. So stop using animals. Every animal matters. And now, thank you so much for supporting our work. And I want to get right to our incredible speakers. So, our first speaker is Skyler Thomas. He is a filmmaker, activist, and educator focused on ecological purposes with over 30 awards for his independently produced films, including Great White Lies, Monsters, which I've actually seen in the theater. It's absolutely incredible. Balance, and The Shame of Point Reyes, which we owe a debt of gratitude to Skyler and that film because a huge campaign in defense of animals is focused on the Tule elk who were killed due to the ranching industry, and The Shame of Point Reyes covers that. He also delivers marine biology presentations that emphasize shark conservation. He holds an MFA in digital media, a BA in liberal arts, a California teaching credential, and an AS in natural science, and is currently pursuing a master's degree in ecology and evolution. Thank you so much, Skyler, for joining us. Take it away.
Thank you, Leah. I appreciate that, and thank you for having me here. Uh, I I won't add a lot more to that. I'll just talk about my shark background. I'm getting close to 30 years ago. What am I, the oldest person on the panel now? 30 years ago was my first shark dive, and I've I've spent time with 27 different species. I, like a lot of people, started my interest in sharks because of white sharks, the great white, or all sharks. All sharks are pretty cool. People consider sharks to be pretty cool, even if you don't like sharks. Most people are quite taken with them, fascinated by them. But with white sharks, I went to South Africa, I think 5 different trips, Guadalupe 5 different times, the Farallon Islands, the Cape Cod, New Zealand, and Australia. So I've seen them everywhere. And at first, you start just having fun with it. And then you realize, okay, there's a lot of problems here. And instead of just enjoying sharks because they're cool, you learn to love them and you learn to want to save what you love. And with that in mind, I'll start sharing my screen. Obviously, the image on the screen is not a shark, but it's one of the many species, as Leah was talking about, bycatch. This is not a fishing net, though. This is a shark net. And interestingly enough, these shark nets exist in places where white sharks are protected. And yet they're also targeted species. They're protected by the government and targeted by the government. Um, Quite a conundrum right there. We can go a lot of ways with that. But my journey with sharks led to me becoming aware of speciesism. I thought sharks were cool, but when I started spending time with sharks, I started realizing that they were very intelligent and that every shark behaved differently than other sharks, not just species being different from each other, but individuals within species acting different than the one right next to the other shark. And these things make you start to question, what do I really know about these animals? What do I really know about any animals? And do any of us know very much about the earth that we share with other creatures? I think your action items, that all three of them, work out great for me to be a guest here today because the Shark Act, Club Med intending to put in more nets in South Africa, and the cruelty of targeting animals for fun all relate back to the documentary films that I've made. For example, we'll start in the middle. In South Africa, the organizations that I was focusing on claimed that they were moving away from nets and they were making progress. But of course, that's not true. Whenever tourism comes in, whenever money plays a part, all of a sudden we're back to putting nets at beaches. And it's not about safety, it's not about science. And all the Endangered Species Acts get thrown out the window as soon as somebody wants it to be presented as, hey, our beaches have nets that make it great to safe here, great to bathe here. Now, these nets, well, I'll get into it later, but these nets do something similar to what the Shark Act is complaining about, and that's the natural behavior of sharks being attracted to animals in distress. The Shark Act is trying to appease fishermen who are complaining about sharks being attracted to fish that are in distress at the end of a line, while these nets that are supposed to be protecting people at beaches are killing animals, not just sharks, but a wide variety of marine animals. And of course, that's distress and it's a smell of death, and it's bringing in sharks, which you would think is already enough of a reason not to believe that it's making the beach safer since it's attracting predators, but it also then traps the animals that are coming in and trying to do exactly what nature intended that animal to do, which is to hone in on the sick and the dying and clean up the ocean. These organizations partially tried to dismiss the effort I was making by saying things are changing. We don't have to we don't have to change because the public's perception of sharks is changing. And I immediately thought of all the videos online about people abusing sharks. And now we have the bow fishing of, my God, of rays, cow-nose rays of all things to get your jollies off of killing. So it is up to us. And we can't depend on the organizations to do what's right. So I've got my notes here on the screen. You learn to love something by paying attention to it. And you realize down the road, you realize we've underestimated everything. There isn't a species that I've taken the time to observe and get to know better or document that I haven't just been like, wow, I never expected to see this. I never expected to see this sort of behavior from this animal. And yet, after you experience that enough times, you realize what you're saying is kind of dumb. It applies to all species, and we've simply somehow been indoctrinated not to give species credit. Now, I started at the other end of the spectrum with a shark. A lot of people don't really think that's a lovable creature or an intelligent creature or the type that you would put on a poster to say, hey, treat this animal with respect. But even sharks showed me that they're incredibly intelligent and even display individual personalities. But as my second point under that point indicates, you're only going to develop that love if you actually take the time required to develop that appreciation. You try to get people to care about the animal that you've developed an appreciation for by getting them to think about an animal that they do care about. Probably a mammal, or maybe a turtle, maybe a dolphin, maybe a whale, maybe a lion. And then you realize those species are facing similar problems, despite the fact that they're more relatable to us. Several years ago, I made a series about lions and how can I be expecting to save sharks when in Africa we know exactly how many lions are left, what's killing the lions, how to stop lions from going extinct, and yet we aren't stopping it, which leads you to an inconvenient realization that you're going to have to give up some of the things that we're using as excuses that lead to the extinction of all of these animals and stop playing the games that we play, pretending that those aren't the reasons that they're going extinct. We'll get back to that later. Speciesism within shark conservation. This was an interesting one when I started trying to make my films not be just the cool things about sharks, but to save sharks. People within the shark industry who, like me, had learned to love the sharks would be like, well, hey, why do we have to make it always about the whales? Why do we always have to make it about the dolphins to get people to care? Well, that's just the reality of it. Start somewhere. But I thought it was interesting that there's speciesism even within the movement. There's anger over focusing even on the wrong species of sharks. Some people are like, oh, the great white's getting too much attention. What about all of these sharks? And then there's also the reality that within the shark world, you have other species of sharks even and other fish being used as bait in ecotourism by scientists and the fishing industry itself. So with the documentaries that I made and with the fishing nets in particular, which is something which is one of IDA's action items, the focusing on the Club Med nets, which are exactly like the ones that I documented. We have a great white in the net, which is megafauna. This is a protected species and one of the sharks that people have come to love, even if coming to love that shark meant that you first feared the heck out of it because of movies like Jaws. And then you have non-targeted species that are harmless to humans, and yet they get caught in the nets anyway. And then you have fish such as this ray caught in the net that are completely wrong species, but it doesn't end there. Then you have the turtles, then you have the dolphins, and then you have the whales. Is that enough? Is witnessing these creatures that are getting more and more similar to sharing the traits that we have enough to get people to say, okay, enough. These nets are not a good idea. What about when it's a human? And while I demonstrated this, I performed a drowning scenario in the nets in South Africa. The reality is humans have drowned in shark nets. Shark nets have actually killed people. And even that hasn't been enough to stop the true motivation behind these shark nets. Moving the goalposts, what do I mean by that? It's a slippery slope when you try to use reasons to save animals that are always going to change. How similar is the animal to us? How well can we relate to the species? I guess whales aren't that similar to us, but they are warm-blooded. They are mammals. They give birth to live young. And anyone who's witnessed whales with their young see that maternal instinct in the caring between them. Another one, how many are being killed? We don't care until it's a certain amount. It's not a problem until, oh, wow, we're wiping out the species. Although if you stop and witness the death of one of them, witnessing that should be enough to change your mind about how many being the real reason that we should stop. And then, of course, when we're killing a certain number of them, they go into the classifications, IUCN listings. Are they threatened? Are they endangered? Or are they in favor with the public as a megafauna? Is the public going to come out and have enough protests that will actually stop them? When I included this in my film, are we only going to save them because they go on to the endangered species list? But as these shark nets have shown, even if they are on a protected species list, it still won't stop the powers that be from killing them. Indoctrination. This is something that takes place in South Africa from the same people that are putting the nets in the water. They take their victims and then they call it edutainment and have people come in to see these victims dissected. And I guess the fact that you saw the animal's guts being pulled out in front of you is supposed to make up for the fact that the ocean is being slaughtered because this is some form of education. And this is a mother having her baby touch a dead tiger shark, which reached a very impressive size, only to be drowned in shark nets. Financial excuses are used for all species, from sharks to bass to seals to whales. The fishing industry will target all of them when greed and ignorance are allowed to mandate the policy. It doesn't matter if it's a mammal or not. It's not about right or wrong or even science. It's who controls the politicians or pays your bills. Most scientists that I know are busy trying to collect enough data to sway policy, but really it's the lobbyists who sway policy. If it's not the fishing industry, it's the tourism industry, as we see in South Africa and Australia. Once again, money trumps reason. The overlap and similarities I wanted to talk about yet again. I mentioned how the behavior of sharks is being targeted. They are doing exactly what they're designed to do, both when an animal is on a hook or when an animal is trapped in a net. And they're being punished for doing exactly what they were designed to do. One of the first things I thought, almost jokingly, was what will the fishermen's social media accounts do if the Shark Act goes into place? Because when I'm trying to find information about sharks online, I have to wade through the never-ending videos of people hooting and hollering and having a good time seeing a fish on a line being pursued by a shark in the water. The real horror is the experience of the creature at the end of the line that can't escape, period. It is doomed and is being reeled in by a human while being pursued by a predator. We know some of these, such as the image in the middle, got a lot of buzz. That is a great white shark, an animal that should not be left helpless in the water to be killed by another predator. But the Shark Act is really astonishing to me. They're going to, because we have shark fishing tournaments already. Something else that I found to be a similarity that in my course of making documentaries about shark culling, we may not have nets in the States, but we do have shark killing tournaments and shark fishing tournaments, which is instead of being passive shark culling, is active and targeted shark culling. What are they going to do at these shark fishing tournaments when a shark is pursuing a shark that they're targeting? Is the Depredation Act going to step in then? The blame game. Blaming sharks is wrong, but it's more acceptable than scapegoating other species. Fishermen blame other species of fish. Fishermen blame seals for eating too much. Japan has even gone so far as to say that they are doing us a favor by getting rid of whales because whales eat creatures in the ocean. There's always a way out. Up north of us, dams and the fishing industry are combining to starve orcas who desperately need Chinook salmon. It does not matter. They will not limit the catches of the fishing industry and they won't open the dams.
Skyler, just we're over time. I hate to say.
This is
Just
my last slide. Perfect.
perfect.
Eventually, you come to the inconvenient conclusion that we have to stop pretending that we resemble a lion or we resemble a shark. Stop exploiting animals. Stop playing the game of changing your methods of protecting people or changing your methods of extracting animals from the ocean. Just stop exploiting animals. We aren't sharks. We're not lions. We're not carnivores. Period.
Thank you, Skyler. Thank you. More to come. Hopefully in the Q&A we'll discuss. Okay. Joey, Szalkiewicz is a wildlife cameraman and environmental filmmaker who began filming great white sharks in Santa Barbara as a college intern. His underwater work has since taken him from a cage at Guadalupe Island to diving among pelagic sharks and manta rays in Mexico's Revillagigedo archipelago. Through his Santa Barbara-based production company, Filament Media, he directs character-driven wildlife films focused on non-lethal coexistence and environmental action. Thank you so much, Joey. Welcome.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks so much for the introduction. Yeah, really grateful to be here. Skyler, I can't tell you how many times I've had those similar feelings of the goalpost moving when you talk to different people. And it's always heartbreaking to feel like you're making inroads with someone and then in the very next conversation the goalposts just move, whether it's money, it's perspective, it's proximity to how close they are to human beings. I've seen many different reasons and they all stem to blame, so I really appreciated listening to that. I fortunately can say that my introduction to great white sharks was much more positive, in the sense of seeing human beings interact with them in more positive ways than not and learning how to coexist. I'll go on to share some clips, but where I live in Santa Barbara, there is a juvenile white shark nursery that's right off the coast. And over the last several years, I've been fortunate to witness the community kind of accept that this exists and that it's something that they will live alongside. And I've been, 45 feet off the beach on a boat filming a great white shark and watching people point and cheer and excited about these juveniles in many ways. There's those who don't like it, and I'm sure their voices are very loud, but it is cool to see the community engaging with this very important stage in a great white shark's life. So that's kind of how I got my introduction. As Leah said, I do wildlife documentary and specifically around predator coexistence and carnivore coexistence. So I've worked with mountain lions, I've worked with wolves, I've worked with great white sharks, done some stuff with orca, many things. It's very cool what I've been able to see. So I thought, to kind of start my presentation, I would just talk about this introduction to great white sharks that I had, and then move into, I've also been to Guadalupe Island and cage dove with them. And it is quite impressive when you finally see a great white shark of mature size underwater, how incredibly moving it is to see a 14 or 16 or 22-foot animal ripping through the water at high speed. It is quite impressive. But yeah, so kind of returning to the Santa Barbara side of things. When I was in college, I connected with a production company here that was telling stories for Shark Week and other distributors about the great white shark nursery that had arrived off of our coast here in Santa Barbara. And I spent the first several weeks being quite terrified of the situations that I found myself in, on a kayak or swimming or on a boat, and witnessing the proximity of the white sharks to the beach. Until after time, you kind of just saw that, as even Skyler said, you come to love the animal after having experiences with them. One thing I like to talk about with mountain lions and with great white sharks is that they're animals that are very, very rarely seen for the average individual, whether they're swimming or hiking. So it kind of is this mentality that if they see me, it's going to go bad. It's going to be a problem. They're going to hurt me. And that mentality creates a fear. And as I've seen mountain lions up close, as I've seen great white sharks up close, as I've been in the water with them, you start to realize that they see you all the time. And it turns out it's not that scary. The scariest thing you could do is drive a car, and no one is that scared of it. Or maybe some are, but you do it so often and it doesn't go wrong. So that kind of mentality is this fear of the unknown that's very prevalent in wildlife documentary and in wildlife interactions, specifically with carnivores. That's been the most meaningful thing I can say, is just once you start to know the animal and you see it behave in a way that isn't predatory, it isn't the Shark Week jaws coming up to eat the tuna, or it's not the mountain lion pouncing on an animal. You realize that they are very unique and intelligent and empathetic and emotional. It's cool to see kitten mountain lions jumping on each other, just as it is to see a great white shark just be inquisitive. Like, I've seen them come up to the camera because they're wondering what the hell I am or what the heck I am. And we're trying to figure it out. So then kind of in that spot, I thought I'd just share a couple clips of the different white sharks I've been able to see. I'll start with the proximity, because I think people, I hope not to scare anyone, but it just is the proximity of us to great white sharks just off of our coastline. So I'm going to share my screen, share sound. optimize for video sharing, share. There's the Respect for Fish Day. Can everyone see this? I'll just get a thumbs up from one of the.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So this one right here is where we'll begin, which is the juveniles. And this is just from my iPhone, but just wait a second.
Okay, he's coming straight in again. It's the same one. This is a big one. Wow. Woo!
So that's kind of where we begin, which is this exact moment. It feels like this animal's going to be quite far. And then when you first zoom out, you realize the beach is right there. We're, 100 feet, 100 yards off the coast, sometimes filming these juveniles, and it's never an issue. Moving into the more exciting side of things, this is the cage diving in Guadalupe. And the first time you ever see a great white shark underwater is pretty amazing. It's jaw-dropping, it's silencing, it's all of those emotions, but they just move so gracefully, and they're so aware of our presence. And many people do have videos of them slamming into the cage, and they say that they want to get the people that are inside of the cage. That might have been others' experiences, but for me, they never slammed into the cage. They never did anything like that. They simply just existed. And with the power and force that they present, it definitely could have been an issue if they were to have operated in that way. So yeah, here's kind of like just slow motion of great white sharks. This is early in the morning. They are quite intimidating looking, but it was fascinating to spend mornings with them in the dark. Here's, underwater cinematography as it happens. This is a friend of mine, a mentor, as we filmed them at sunrise, and I'll never forget this moment. It is quite special to be underwater with them. The cage does provide quite a bit of safety, but I have also been in the water with them without a cage. They're juveniles, but I'm also a frequent surfer. So I've been there and have seen the interaction between white sharks off our coast. Here is, that's that other video. Here's a more funny moment of filming them where you can see he looks away right as one breaches right in front of us. And then moving on to some of the final stuff that I thought would be interesting to share before I wrap up is I've also had the opportunity to work with giant manta rays. Here's us diving with them, filming them, dolphins. I believe, that's not where the shark was. Here's the sharks. Greater hammerhead, scalloped hammerhead. This is a Galapagos shark, I believe. But you can see that many of them do have hooks in their mouth from the fishing industry just off the coast of Mexico. This is in the archipelago Revillagigedo, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So these ones can't be pursued, but as with many MPAs or protected areas, these fish are highly mobile. And while it does provide great protection there, many of them can be fished just outside of it. So here's an image of this Galapagos shark, I believe, with a hook in its mouth from down in Guadalupe, or from Socorro. Let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, here's just some cool video of being in the cages and filming. And I actually wanted to conclude by saying, along with what Skyler had said, let me see, juveniles, nautilus. I think there's one. Yeah, here are the great whites one more time. Just the grace of them at full speed. They're inquisitive. They learn. Yeah, kind of the end of the presentation that I wanted to share on my front is just to echo what Skyler had shared about getting to understand them. I think that one of the things that is most attractive to me about working in carnivore coexistence and predator coexistence is that fear of the unknown and the concern that people have for something that they don't know. And as you spend more time with it and you see their behaviors and you learn they have so many similarities to us, but also many differences, but just to know that they exist and that they have their own lives that are worth understanding and protecting. It is a very quick transition from the conversations that I've had with people who have never seen a gray white shark to a place of understanding that when they see me in the water and I'm at least comfortable talking about them, they become more interested. So I think takeaways from my conversation that I'd like to share is just The ocean is such a plentiful resource that we have taken an unbelievable amount of advantage of, ranging from sharks all the way down to small fish that never get any screen time. And spending a lot of time knowing that just because we can't see underneath the surface, um, there is a massive ecosystem under there that is under threat and under duress and needs to be taken care of. And there's a lot of great work being done through all of the individuals on this call, I am sure, as well as many others. A great movie I can recommend that is made by a friend. I didn't personally work on it, but it's called Ocean with David Attenborough, and it talks about the many different ecosystems and how do I want to say this? The ecosystems and the ways in which different sects of society have protected them and the impacts and the kind of path forward. Again, I came from a place of a lot of hope growing up or being in UCSB with Santa Barbara and seeing a community engage with great white sharks, but I know that there are many places that do not. So yeah, happy to answer any questions revolving around a beautiful animal that I've been fortunate to spend several years with. Not quite as many as Tyler or Skyler. It sounds like you've lived quite an incredible life filming them in much more conflicted areas, but they are an animal very worth spending time to know because the marine ecosystem and many other aquatic ecosystems are forgotten about. They're not quite as visual, and it takes the time to get under the surface to learn more about them. So, hope everyone was able to see a gray white and understand how they operate as an intelligent entity. And my concluding story is that as we were watching the great whites in Guadalupe, we could see the change in their behavior as they understood how to navigate the people pulling the tuna heads. In the beginning, they would come towards them where the people wrangling could see. And by the end, they were coming from underneath the boat and just understanding how to intellectually navigate the issues that we presented. And I can say that I share similar perspectives of cage diving and ecotourism as you learn more and more about the places blowing up where people can swim with animals. They usually become quite a conflict to the species that are just trying to exist. I am fortunate that I got to see it and be in Guadalupe, but it is not an industry without its own flaws, though I hope everyone can see great white sharks or any animal in their natural environment. So
Thank
yeah,
you
that's kind of
so
it. I've loved a very fortunate life of seeing great whites underwater.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Honestly, your allotted times for both of you, it's just so not enough. I wish we had 2 hours to really delve in and give each of you half an hour. Anyway, okay, thank you. So now on to Spencer Roberts is a marine ecologist, environmental journalist, and PhD candidate at the University of Miami. His work is published in outlets like The Intercept, The Nation, Wired, and Science Advances. He directs Fish Defender, an organization of divers and scientists working to advance protections for marine wildlife across the United States. Welcome, Spencer.
Thanks so much, In Defense of Animals, for having me, and to the other presenters. I'm just putting my screen up now. Let me know when
Yep.
we're good. Okay. So I'm going to give an abridged version of a talk that I like to do on shark conservation and policy called Beneath the Fin, The Blind Side of Shark Conservation. And I hope to foster an honest conversation about what we've done well in our efforts to protect sharks and as well as the areas we failed. So some background for those of you who aren't aware or maybe aren't aware of the statistics. Sharks are in a state of global crisis. Sharks and their relatives, the rays and chimeras, are declining faster than virtually any other animal group on Earth besides corals. In the past 70 years, since 1950, the global abundance of sharks has been decimated by roughly 2/3. And since 1950, it has been halved, in which the proportion of threatened species has multiplied by over 10 times. And to be clear, the driver of these declines is primarily, it's not pollution, it's not climate change or habitat destruction. These are all very serious threats to sharks. But the driver of this rapid and precipitous decline in sharks is fishing. It is not overfishing. These are fishing practices in fisheries that are overwhelmingly considered sustainable fishing. So we can talk about that later, but let's move on to some specific cases. So it's not just certain types of sharks, it's virtually all of them. We can look at our pelagic or oceanic sharks, which have declined by around 71% on average in the past 50 years across every ocean basin, in every habitat, across every body size and life history strategy. On our reefs, a third to half of coral reefs surveyed have seen the extinction of at least one reef shark species over the last half century. There are large regions of our ocean, like the Lesser Antilles, close to home, where in our lifetimes people swam with sharks, and today they are gone. Even the deep sea sharks, which we barely understand, have become increasingly rare in catch records, with some species showing declines of up to 90% or more. So despite what you may hear on the news or on social media, sharks are not, in fact, overpopulated and are in a state of global crisis. And this prompts us to ask why. Because I think when we look around at our society, we talk a lot about how sharks are misunderstood. And I think that some of the tropes around, and there are certainly threats, when we talk about these shark nets that some of the other presenters brought up, there are fears that are driving people to kill sharks. But the fears that drove the sort of mindless fishing and killing of sharks in the post-Jaws era, for instance, that's a movie that's over a half century old. I look at our society today, I see sharks made into plushies. I see children's songs about sharks, television programs. I see a culture that is fascinated with sharks, understands that they're threatened and wants to protect them. But we have a fisheries regulation system that views sharks and other marine life simply as resources to be exploited. So in the last 20 years, science has really risen the alarm about the decline in sharks. This is a landmark study that estimated the first global annual fishing mortality estimate for sharks, and it put this number around 100 million. You may have heard this statistic. What you may not have heard is about the follow-up study that came just a couple years ago. So a lot of the same scientists use the same model to estimate global fishing mortality for sharks about 10 years later. And they found that even more sharks are being killed today. Despite, over this time frame, a huge public awareness being raised around the plight of sharks and countries around the world passing laws to stop shark finning, which these researchers estimated to be the primary cause of shark mortality. So where did we go wrong? This is the most important part of the talk. So if you take anything away from this, lock in here. What these researchers did was they classified the different types of national shark protections that we have around the world. Everything from no finning regulations to, in the blue, what are called shark sanctuaries, countries and jurisdictions where all shark fishing is prohibited. And you'll notice that all of these regulations to protect sharks involve curbing finning, this practice of cutting off sharks' fins and throwing them back in the water. And so you can see over time in these top panels, the increase of finning laws all over the world, and then the species that were added to the CITES 2 appendix, which means that they restricted their international trade. And what this study found was that the only national policy that actually decreased the average fishing mortality rate for sharks over time was entirely prohibiting shark fishing. So if I could put it into a sentence, we have made shark conservation about preventing sharks from being wasted instead of protecting sharks from being killed. And this strategy has failed. And we could talk about why. And I'll briefly go through this. So we can talk about the rise of the meat trade to supplement the fin trade, driven by fisheries like Spain, Portugal, and the United States, and sold to countries like Brazil, but also countries in the global north, like the UK and the US, where all of our over 90% in the UK, at least, this study here in 2019 found over 90% of the fish and chips in the chipperies, or whatever the Brits call them, were made of sharks. And even if you don't care about the small dogfish sharks for some reason, some of these were large endangered species, like scalloped hammerheads found in these fish and chips. We have some where I'm from here in Florida. You can find blacktip sharks sold at Publix. The meat trade is actually larger, both in volume and revenue, than the fin trade. Yet in conservation, we have so much focus on the fin trade, which has sort of left this blind spot beneath the fin. And so we have all these other markets rising up for different shark parts, including the liver oil from deep sea sharks and the trophy trade, which some of my research has helped to highlight. This is primarily driven by the market for jaws. On the internet, around 2/3 of the endangered species that we found openly listed for sale on sites like eBay and Etsy were shark jaws, a huge amount of these endangered species. The mako was actually, short fin mako here was actually the most openly traded endangered species on the internet. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, what we see on the online marketplaces. Here is a bust by the Fish and Wildlife Service of a shipping container that held over 6,000 shark jaws with unknown origin. So you can imagine how many of these shipping containers are not being cracked open, how many of these jaws are being trafficked. This is a huge market. But to sum it up, I want to talk about what we can do to affect and change these policies and drive them toward a more effective and protectionist lens. And this is why I founded Fish Defender. So as I said, the data shows us that we need to transition from just preventing sharks from being wasted to protecting them from being killed. And there's a lot of ways that we can all be involved in this process. There are policies being weighed all the time by different state agencies and federal agencies on regulations that a lot of people aren't paying attention to. And these conversations are dominated by fishing industry interests. And so one of the big things we're trying to do at Fish Defender is engage people from across the political spectrum, across different beliefs and backgrounds to advocate for sharks in these policy settings. So we'll get to the policies. One of the big things that we do with Fish Defender is research. So here's just some of the graphs. Some of these are things that we just post on social media to be useful for people in conversations, like, you know, these ideas. I just posted this one today about this idea that sharks have become overpopulated, which is driving a lot of this impetus for the Sharks Act. That is a ridiculous myth. Here are some of the data to show it. We talk about the aquarium trade for sharks, the activity of illegal land-based shark fishing. Some of these are in review and some peer-reviewed articles. Here's a study that I'm working on about the depletion of prey for marine predators and what this has to do in terms of these conflicts between predators and fisheries. There's a strong relationship between prey depletion and conflict between predators and fisheries, wouldn't you know? And of course, we also talk about, and this is a very serious issue in the United States, I believe, the lack of endangered species protections for sharks, the systematic rejection of Endangered Species Act protections, not just to sharks, but all marine fishes across the board. Also, am working on investigations. So here's one from a couple years ago on the shark tournaments that Skyler mentioned earlier. So NOAA registers these shark tournaments. I was interested in how easy it was to register one of these tournaments. So I registered for my own. I filled out a one-page web form and waited 2 days, and I was approved to begin accepting registration fees for a competition to kill critically endangered scalloped hammerhead sharks. If you want to read that story, it's in The Nation. It's called The Great American Shark Slaughter. But on the policy front, this is one of the things that I think is really exciting about Fish Defender. You know, a lot of boards, you can watch what they do online, you can donate to help, but we are always reaching out to our followers to try to engage them. in these policy conversations and reaching out for action items. So just the other week, California was considering new regulations to prohibit gear used to target white sharks from beaches. We're talking about wire leaders, big hooks over 1.5 inches in diameter, and also the practice of dragging the sharks out of the water, which of course greatly decreases their survival chances. There was a big pushback from the fishing community on this, but with our video activating and our posts and activating our different collaborators and followers, we got over 1,000 comments submitted to California Fish and Wildlife on this on these regulations, and they did pass. They're temporary regulations though, so they could, after 180 days and about 3 months, they're going to be reviewing whether to make those permanent. So sign the petition. It's on our site. It's on our Instagram, and follow along. And we'll be pushing to set those regulations into law. This was just about a month ago. NOAA was considering massively increasing the recreational catch limits for Atlantic sharks across the board. We got over 400 comments submitted on behalf of sharks before we got involved. All the comments were from the fishing industry, people saying sharks are overpopulated, we got to increase these catch limits. But I think that most people want to protect sharks, but they don't see these conversations happening. So we're paying attention to these policy conversations, and we're putting out these action items, giving you chances to get involved. Here's our petition on social media shark poaching. This is these practices of illegally removing sharks from the water or posing illegal photo shoots on the beach in states where those practices are banned for protected species. We've got over 6,000 signatures on that. Please sign that petition, and there'll be more of that to come on the study that we're working on. And then, of course, on the Shark Act. Thanks again to In Defense of Animals for getting involved with this campaign. The Shark Act is a crafty bill designed to remove legal barriers to bring back the commercial shark fishing industry as a means of reducing conflict between sharks and fisheries. So we've gotten over 700 letters submitted to senators across the country. You can check out on our website, fishdefender.org. Our template, it just takes a few clicks to send a letter to your senator, and that'll put you on our email list. So check it out. And I'll just put up some contact details. Our website, fishdefender.org. Please check it out. We've got all of our campaigns listed there, and our Instagram at fish_defender is where you can follow us. Thanks again for attending this webinar, and I just want to express my gratitude to see organizations and individuals interested in animal rights getting involved in marine wildlife conservation and protection, because we really need people from across the, from all different backgrounds getting involved. It's really encouraging to see groups like this stepping up for sharks, and we need to build those coalitions. So thanks again. Let's open it up for questions.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Skyler. This has been incredible. We do have a couple questions from the chat, but apparently we only have 2 minutes left. So if by chance I might be able to read 1 or 2 questions from the chat, but before that, I just want to make sure, because everyone is asking in the chat too, can each of you please let us know again how is the best way to find out more about you? Like one website, one particular link, and please state it now. And we will also be putting links to find out more about these speakers in the description of this YouTube video when it is put up. Okay, Skyler. Unmute.
You put up sharkpurpose.com. That's a good one for people to go to.
Okay, great. Joey.
Filament Media is fine. I put in the chat just the company that I do all the shark work with was On the Wave Productions. They contracted me, so you might as well contact me there if you want to talk about sharks.
Great, thank you. And Spencer.
Fishdefender.org. and on social media at fish_defender.
Excellent. Okay, I have one little question at the end, but in case any of you can stay another minute or two, I'm going to throw this out to all three of you. Going to try to blend these two questions. So, um, Australian Valerie and Ron they spoke out against sonic sound dark shark deterrents to replace shark nets that Australia failed to comply with. Did the US, number one, did the US use these techniques as well after the trial? So the second question is, Joey went into the talking point against nets, that they actually attract sharks by way of trapping other fish. What other arguments can be used to buttress the no net movement, and where can I find others' resources? So we gave resources for the speakers, but do any of you want to respond to either of those questions?
Does that mean go?
Yes,
I'm
whoever
trying to be
wants to
polite.
jump in. Go ahead, Skyler.
If you watch my documentary Monsters about South Africa, it covers a lot of the reasons. Look, the shark nets don't protect people, in addition to the other reasons. The claims that they do are lies. They're bold-faced lies, as a matter of fact. People should be mad enough that they're being lied to about the protection that they serve. Even if they did protect people, the damage to the oceans is another reason not to buy into them. The damage to species. I mean, it's not just, oh, shoot, a whale drowned. We're talking about serious depletion of multiple species of animals in the ocean, thanks to a false sense of security. And this false sense of security is only in place to appease a placebo effect of people who want to use an ocean as a swimming pool. Like these animals live in the ocean and they are dying in the ocean because humans want to recreate without thinking about there being other animals in the animals' home.
Indeed.
Go to a pool, people.
Good
In fact,
point. Good point,
in
Stella.
Australia and South Africa, you can go to saltwater pools right there on the beach.
Amazing.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, that's a
Problem solved.
perfectly put. I will say, so the one other part of that was about the sonic deterrents and have sonic deterrents been tested? I don't know if anyone's willing to speak to that.
I can speak to some deterrents. Does anyone else want to go before me?
Sounds like you're the net expert. Go for it.
So, um, if we're talking about deterring sharks from biting people, all the way back to my first documentary, Great White Lies in 2014, you're talking about statistics that are so low you can't make a difference between whether it's random or anything that you can actually base science on. So, like some of the scientists that I interviewed were like, well, chew gum while you're surfing, and that'll be a shark deterrent for all the science that you can pull from buying one of these sonic shark deterrents. We're talking about next to nothing, people. We're talking about next to nothing. And we're talking about as many people being bitten while coaling is taking place as when coaling didn't take place. There's nothing to support it. Just understand that you're sharing the planet with other creatures, and some of these creatures have teeth.
That's a quotable line. Some of these creatures simply have teeth. Yes. Thank you. Well, we lost Joey because he had to go. Spencer, did you want to say something in response to that?
No, I think Skylar nailed that one.
Okay. So it does sound to me like the overarching, at least mainly the point made by Spencer and Skylar in particular, were about us humans thinking we have a right to, dominate these marine animals, aquatic animals, all animals, and especially if we don't even need to be doing this anymore. So if if we have come to a point in our evolution where the vast majority of the human species is still decimating our planet and all the earthlings on it for things that we don't even need and are better off without, what do you have to say to any viewers who might be watching who understand, like I still ate fish. Fish was the last thing to go for me when I finally went vegan. So, any final thoughts, Skylar and Spencer, on the issue of the fishing industry and continuing to eat fish and think that we have a right to use these animals as we please?
Well, I wrote down notes for both Spencer and Joey, if Spencer can stick around, because I thought it was really interesting. But, like he was talking about the battle against waste versus just killing them. And it made me think about some of the shark finning footage with people that I've worked with. The shark finning industry literally then cut the fins off, but the regulation was that you had to haul the shark in with the fins and there to not be a violation. And they had like this weird system of it. The fin was like technically attached, but not really attached. And still the fin was the only thing that was going to be sold. Like if you want to get past playing these games, the fishing industry talks about, oh, well, we're going to drop our hooks at this depth, or we're going to use a different form of hook, or the shark net people say that they're going to put dolphin pingers on, they're going to reduce how many dolphins are killed. Just, just stop with the destructive practices, and we can quit with all these different games. And also, Spencer mentioned the depletion of the sharks, the astonishing depletion of the sharks. And this has been of many marine species. And that's been the case ever since I started, which was a long time ago. And the declaration from the Finnish fishing industry has been the same the entire time. Oh, there's too many sharks. There's too many sharks. It's never the same, and yet somehow their voices get heard. It's never the truth, and yet somehow their voices seem to be the loudest. I wish Joey'd stayed because he said he was a spear fisherman. Spear fishermen
I was
are
gonna.
fishermen. Spear fishermen can attest that healthy reefs are reefs with sharks. The presence of sharks actually help there be more fish for fishermen. And it seems like fishermen need to go back and study ecology before they're allowed to fish.
Yeah, so on the fishing industry, one of the most fascinating statistics that I like to remind people of is that this industry extracts and kills upwards of 1 trillion wild fish from the ocean every year to produce less than 1% of the world's calories. This is not an industry that's feeding the world. There are places, of course, where indigenous people, subsistence fishermen rely on fishing to survive, but the vast majority of the fishing industry, the commercial extraction of fish from the ocean, the way that fish gets to your restaurant, to your grocer, is not for survival, and it's not for subsistence. And actually, a lot of those subsistence fishing communities are the ones that are the most impacted and harmed by commercial fishing. So we need to keep that in mind. We need to change. And Skylar talked about the way that their voices are heard the most. And it gets to the way that policy is constructed in in the United States, and it's probably similar in many other countries, but we actually have mandated in the law that the councils and advisory panels that make decisions on regulating the fishing industry are required to have a certain amount of representation by the industry. So this institutional corruption, and we really need to overhaul these systems entirely. I'm talking about NOAA fisheries. I'm talking about our state wildlife agencies, Florida Wildlife Commission, et cetera. So it's a long battle, but by engaging the process and by showing the regulators that there is a huge constituency of people that wants to protect these animals for their inherent value as wildlife and not just for their instrumental use as resources, can put us on the path toward that change.
Spencer,
Absolutely.
as a PhD candidate, and you're at University of Miami,
Right.
you probably are familiar with Neil Hammerschlag.
Yeah.
And he was one of my first interviews in 2014. And one of the things we talked about is that the destructive industries don't have to prove anything before they go in and destroy, but it's the burden of the scientists to go in and try to prove the destruction that is clear and evident. And it gets tied up in 10 years of peer-reviewed papers and then going through legislative process. And in the meantime, they get to just destroy without any regulations. It's kind of backwards. You should have to prove that you aren't going to hurt before you're allowed to go out and cause damage.
Absolutely. There's a great old paper on that called Reversing the Burden of Proof in Fisheries Management, I believe, by Paul Dagan. It's around 2000 or something, but it makes that exact argument in technical terms. So it's an old argument, and not much has changed since then. But the more that we can educate people on it and engage people in the political process, I think that's the best we can do toward activating change.
You had someone in the chat who was in disbelief that he would probably be being sold shark meat. I wanted to add that great whites in South Africa are now under an additional threat because the South African government has allowed this inshore demersal shark fishing that is depleting smaller sharks that sharks eat. And that is specifically being targeted for fish and flake that is sent to Australia. They know very well that they're consuming shark as fish and chips there and don't have any problem with it. It seems reasonable to believe that a lot of white fish has been replaced with shark or just about anything that you don't want to know the real name of.
Wow. I learned so much here, and that's the most astonishing thing I didn't either. Oh my gosh. Thank you, gentlemen. Unfortunately, it's my job to have to end this, which I hate to do. So, everyone, please get involved. Please speak up. Please, if you're still consuming aquatic animals, consider not doing that anymore after this incredible uh, showcase with these masterful activists. Thank you so much for being here. We've put the links to get to know these gentlemen more and to advocate more in the chat. And again, this will be in the description for the YouTube channel. And please go to also respectforfish.org to please sign the alerts, including Stop the Shark Act, and to get nets off of beaches. Fleur, any last words?
Very, very well said. Yes, thank you. Thank you incredibly. This has been, yeah, extremely informative. I think there's a lot of work for us to be doing, and you've given us a lot of positive things that we can do to go and help sharks. So I also want to say a thank you to everyone who if you're signing our petitions, if you're signing alerts, if you've been taking action, you've been going and watching these amazing films and advocacy, sharing things on social media, that all makes a difference, very big difference. So all of us adding up together, our drops together do make an ocean of compassion, an ocean of change. And I did see Jill Marcus saying you've just donated to Spencer's organization in defense of animals. Thank you so much, Jill. Everyone who is able to make a donation, it helps things like this happen. We can't do that without you. So thank you everyone for being here, for supporting us in whatever way you are able to. We really appreciate it. And thank you again for your time, Spencer, Skyler, and Joey. And looking forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks.
Again, thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.